Good evening, 12s, and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle, and we're going to try for every week. We are back from what has been a long hiatus. Tino has been dodging the smoke. He went somewhere in a hole. Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl. All his takes from the previous year, they were
Seattle
all wrong. He
Seattle
had trouble.
Seahawks won a Super Bowl, not Sam Darnold. Seattle Seahawks did.
So Tino has gone to therapy. He has seen support. He has gotten through this grief process, and he has now
Uh,
accepted that Sam Darnold has led your Seattle Seahawks to a Super Bowl victory. Tino,
what's
how you
up?
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I uh, I enjoyed the Super Bowl. I enjoyed the championship.
Yeah.
Sometimes you win despite your quarterback, but we can get into that.
Yes, we should because we have
I,
not had the chance to talk since this team. The last time we talked, they were headed to the Super
hmm
Bowl. Sam Darnold played a phenomenal game in the NFC Championship game. We were already starting to eat some crow, obviously, because biggest question was you just didn't feel like this team was built to win a Super Bowl if Sam Darnold was the quarterback, and immediately he proved you wrong. And I think I remember one of the last questions we had was, "Do could I see Sam Darnold hoisting the Lombardi Trophy?" And I said, "Yes,"
Uh-huh.
and it seems to have been we're going with fortuitous lately. So it seems to be a fortuitous question that you asked because that's exactly what happened. But I know you're just rooting for the team to win. But how are you feeling about our guy? He's our guy.
So there was a philosopher um, who once said that hoes got to eat too. I think it was Snoop Dogg that said that. That's kind of how I feel about Sam Darnold. Uh, you know, he did play well, right? So
Yeah,
postseason, 56 of 91, 62% completion rate, 224 yards per game, 5 touchdowns. The big one is no picks, and it
yeah,
was a 102.4 uh, passer rating. I think you put him on an average team, and the team goes 8-8. They didn't win despite him. Now he wasn't as bad as Trent Dilfer was when he won, right?
yeah.
I think he was better than Dilfer, but I do think they won this Super Bowl because of everybody else. The cool thing is, and you spoke to this all year, was to see the growth, right? To and you don't always, we make these big proclamations about players and assume that's who they're always going to be.
Yeah.
And I think the quarterback position is so different because it's such a mental position, right? And you can develop and learn in a certain way. And that was the cool thing to see about him. I still think he's garbage. I still think that he's not garbage. I think that he's an average quarterback. I don't think he's
Okay,
any
that's
better
fair.
than that.
That's fair.
And I think that the surrounding cast was so great. I think that, offensively, K9 came up big, right?
Yes.
The offensive line was better than we ever thought they would have been.
Hmm.
AJ Barner was better than any of us gave us credit for. And we have, like, hands down, the best wide receiver in football.
Yes, we
That
do.
changes things, right? Charles Cross played up to
Yes,
his
he did.
potential.
Yes, he
Ray
did.
Zabel was who we thought he was going to be, right? So I just
Or who I thought he was going to be. But yeah, go ahead.
no, I came around on him pretty quickly. I
Yeah,
was a hater at the beginning, but I came around pretty quickly. I guess the point for me is that yes, did Sam Darnold do what we always wanted him to do, which is take care of the football? He in the biggest situations, absolutely he did. And
yeah.
that's what his contribution to this team. He had a couple of really beautiful clutch throws as well.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I'll give him credit. Do I ever expect him to win a Super Bowl again? Do I expect this Seahawks team to make an NFC championship game with him as quarterback again? I don't, honestly. I don't. I also think that we saw that coordinator here for 1 year, Clint Kubiak.
Mhm.
We saw him get a head coaching job immediately afterwards. I think he did a really, really, really good job. And I think Donald was the beneficiary of the job that Kubiak did. So I don't know. I sound like a hater, and I play around. I am a little bit of one when
Yeah,
I'm
you're a,
screwing
you're a
around.
hater.
But the reality is he a top 10 quarterback? In my opinion, no. Is he a
That's fair.
top
That's
50?
fair.
Is he between 10 and 15, 10 and 20? Yeah. But my theory that you could never win a Super Bowl with a quarterback like Sam Darnold was proven wrong. It truly was. And I think it's because everyone around him, from the coaches to the offensive line to the elite receiver to a defense that's generational, that's the real reason that we won. So
For sure.
if I'm giving him flowers, I'll give him three dandelions and a rose. Right? He can take those. At least he gets the rose. But I don't know. I'm still basking in the fact that we won a Super Bowl and
Yeah.
that a Seattle sports franchise is a champion, and that to me is what matters.
Oh, for sure. It's been something I'm soaking in. It's been something all year. Just because of the journey, like you said, this year was unexpected for most. And even for me, I mean, I did see a ceiling of an NFC championship if everything went right. I did
I
not
do.
anticipate that they would have gotten to the. You asked how far I can see them getting, and
Right.
I
You're
said
right.
I can see them losing in the NFC championship. Right.
Yep. Yep.
That was my take. Um, but they surpassed even that,
Mm-hmm.
and how they did it, the culture with which they built around this team, the coaching that this team uh, they made adjustments in ways that I just haven't seen in any recent way. Because even Clint Kubiak, right? It wasn't that long ago where we were having conversations about this running game, right?
Yep.
And they had no run game, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And they couldn't figure that out. And it was Sam Darnold bums away. And we didn't feel like that was going to be sustainable long term. And what happens when people start, really focusing in on JSN and Clint Kubiak, to his credit, adjusted, right? We
Right.
saw major adjustments, especially in those Rams games. It was
Right.
a chess match and really became a master of wits,
Right.
in a way that I didn't know Clint Kubiak would have had that in his bag. And frankly, that to me, that's how he got the head coaching job, was that NFC championship performance that he put on. Because
Yep.
while Sam Darnold was phenomenal in that game, and he was phenomenal in that
Mm-hmm.
game, the Seahawks don't win that game without him because defense was struggling
Right.
in the NFC Championship, but it was Clint Kubiak who kept putting all of his players in the right positions, in the adjustments that he made, getting JSN and all over the field. Man, it was a master class,
Yep.
and with Tom Brady calling that game, you kind of tell as you're listening to the broadcast that Tom Brady was like, "Yeah, this is our guy."
Right.
Um, Now I will say, to fast forward a little bit to your thoughts on the current team, I am obviously going to be more optimistic than you still, because I remember a time where you didn't believe in Clint Kubiak. So I am going to
Hey,
I don't
everybody
know.
can go on the heat. He went on the heater. He went on
He
the
went on a
heater,
heater. He
and
went on a heater.
he scored a job for it.
I remember when he was too boring. So, but I will say, Brian Flory, I've got more questions about him. What I loved about Clint Kubiak was that he was a proven, I believe that experience, his floor, right,
Right.
was like we know he can run and call a competent offense. And I felt like that's all this defense needed, right?
Right.
That floor doesn't exist with Brian Flory. Flurry.
Fleury.
I think it's Flurry. Flory. Anywho, that doesn't exist with him, so that is a concern. But I do like that they kept the system consistent. The
Yep.
system is consistent. They retained a lot of the coaches, guys who I frankly thought were going to be in the running, like Justin Alden. I thought was going to be. Uh, I thought he was the guy. Honestly, I thought they were just going to hire from within.
Right.
I like that they still retained most of their coaching staff. Clint Kubiak really only took one guy with him, in
Right.
all earnest. So I like
I.
that you still have that in the building, and I
Yep.
hope it helps, because that is the one thing that I think makes me nervous going into this next season.
I will say too that the acquisition of Rashid Shaheed was the perfect time with the perfect player for what this team needed to change the whole thing, right? If
Yeah,
we talked ad nauseum about what happens to this offense if you don't have a deep threat,
yeah,
right? Every podcast we talked about you're creeping safeties up, you're not afraid of anybody deep. Preseason, we said, is anyone really scared of Marquez Valdez Scantling, right? We
Yep.
talked about him a ton. And we talked about, is Torrey Horton that guy, right?
Mhm.
Is Ricky White even that guy? Like we went deep into it trying to figure it out. And then you trade for one of the fastest players in the NFL who's proven that he can catch the ball, who was absolutely perfect for this offense, right? And so I think John Schneider needs a ton of credit
Yes.
for that one acquisition. Now he did a lot of other great stuff, right? Everything kind of fit. Like Demarcus Lawrence obviously was
Right.
absolutely phenomenal,
Hmm.
but that Shaheed signing is what changed. Really did kind of inject life into this offense when it truly needed it.
Yeah.
And JSN isn't JSN without a deep threat on the other side. He just isn't. He's elite. He's a beautiful player, but I think he does need somebody else on the other side, right? Because while he is a JSN catches deep balls, I don't consider him a deep threat. I consider him more of a technician. So, anyways, the point is just that John Schneider could not have. He didn't really miss, right? The Gray Zabel thing was smart, right? Sundell was smart. Barner played a huge role on this team. Defensively, right? Lawrence, there was just you go each position group, there was something that he did, picking up Job essentially off the scrap heap and him becoming your number two corner. Knowing to stick with Kobe Bryant even when Kobe Bryant wasn't good, knowing that there was some talent there. I really think that what John Schneider did with this team has gone not unnoticed, but I think he deserves more credit than he's being given. All those things had to fall into place. Mike McDonald, right, had to learn quickly. Clint Kubiak had to be the right hire. Is everything happened for a reason, and it was a beautiful thing. It really, really was.
It really was. I agree. Now, I do think that JSN, excuse me, I do think that JSN doesn't necessarily need one, but obviously,
He's better with one.
correct, right? Any wide receiver is right. I think we went deep enough into the season without Shaheed, a large enough sample size to show that he's just that good. But the playoffs now, I think there's an argument to say that come playoff time, if you didn't have Shaheed, is that a bigger challenge, right? I think they still win the same amount of games, but do you get home field advantage, right? Like, those. I think that regular season could have got away with it. Playoffs, NFC Championship, much harder.
He he also tilted the field in special teams with his returns,
Correct.
right?
Didn't
And
want
so I
Hayward.
think there are a lot of things that he did. A lot of his value is not going to be wrapped up in yardage and touchdowns. It's
Right.
does he pull the safety all the time, right? Does he
Yes.
attract double teams because of his speed? Does he get you an extra 20 yards where you don't have to get two extra first downs because he returns a punt for 25 yards, right?
Yeah.
Or returns a kickoff for 45 yards. You can picture him running and then running out of bounds at midfield over and over again on a kickoff return. And he's just, I think he's a total game changer.
He
And
was
they got him for what, a four?
4 to 5.
It's crazy, right?
Yep.
Because the Saints didn't want to pay him, and then the Saints turn around and draft Jordan Tyson with their, I think the number 8 overall pick.
Hmm.
And I get that they get paid differently, and Tyson and Shaheed are very different players. But the fact of the matter is, you needed to find another wide receiver in New Orleans, and you had one right there, right? You could have spent that pick on something else that you
Yep.
needed more. Francis Mauigoa was there, right? The right tackle
Right.
who was picked by the Giants. He would have been a huge help to that team. So I don't know. I think that the Seahawks got away with one, and I think that he and John Schneider were huge keys to this. I was trying to
100%.
transition us to the draft right there a little bit.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like it. But no, I think to further your point, I would actually say I think one of the more underrated aspects of what Shaheed brought to this team that ultimately I agree won them the championship, in addition to the special teams and the fact that really got to the point where teams just started to kick it out of the end zone on purpose
Yep.
to have us start at the 35-yard line,
Yep.
but the run game. I think there is a stronger
Yeah.
correlation to Shaheed's impact on the running game and how while I do think they made schematic adjustments and coaching changes, we know Kenny Palomalo, basically it sounds like he was quietly let go or had to step
Yeah.
down. Justin Alton took that role. I'm sure that plays some role, but the reality is, with the threat of Shaheed, it opened up the box way more, and so the running game took off almost simultaneously. As soon as you saw the acquisition of a Rashid Shaheed, you then saw like
Mm,
the whole run game open up, right? And you saw him get involved in the run
hmm
game, right? And so that aspect that he brought too. So just to add on to that point, like completely agreeing with you, but um, it's so multifaceted how impactful that one move
hmm
was. Really, I agree with you that without that move, I'm not sure that they win a Super Bowl.
I
I,
don't think
I
they
don't
do.
I don't think they do.
There are too many impactful plays each game that
Mhm.
help them win.
Yep.
So speaking of running game, this team loses
Super Bowl MVP.
K9. Well, loses K9 right to the Chiefs, who was like the top running back in free agency. We all kind of, I think, knew that he was going to go away.
Yeah.
Did he get what 14 million a year or something like that?
15, I think. 15.
Um,
15 for three
which is a
years, I think.
lot.
Yep.
I get the Kansas City argument. They need to build around Mahomes, right? They need a
Right.
threat. They understand they need more explosiveness on that team. I'm for one, I'm glad that they didn't re-sign him. I think that's a lot of money to pay. Um, However, Seahawks select the end of the first round Jadarian Price, not even a starter on his own team.
No.
5'11", 203, running back out of Notre Dame. I joke because he was the second team running back behind Jeremiah Love, who was the third pick overall.
Right.
Um, what did you think of the Price pick? What did you think of picking a running back in the first round? Are you supportive? Are you excited? Where are you at with their first round pick?
I'm excited. I'm supportive. I think I feel similarly that they did coming out of the draft, and that is you wish they could have been able to trade down, but you also understand, especially with news coming out in more recent times, that the 49ers
Yep.
were quietly eyeing that pick. They
Yep.
needed, don't get me wrong, I love the idea of a Jonah Coleman, and I would have been happy with that. But the reality is, your best chance at getting back to the Super Bowl was to get someone with the upside that Price has.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like the idea of getting him at the end of the first because you have that fifth year option. Had they been able to get Kenneth Walker at the end of the first round, you would have had that fifth year option. This wouldn't have been an issue this
Yep.
year. It could have been something you could have addressed in a better running back class, um, which will be the 2027 class. But anywho, I gave it a B minus. Wish you could have traded back. I'm sure they do too. But I
They
think
tried.
ultimately, the what?
They tried.
Yeah, they tried. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They tried. So, I'm not gonna poo-poo the pick. I do think it's projection, obviously, because of his limited role. But I also know, I'll say the reason I'm comfortable with that is because the Seahawks clearly want a two-back system. They're not looking for a bell cow. They're not looking to give one person all of the touches. And at times that was an issue with K9, and he letting we kind of got hints now, knowing that that was a problem with
Right.
him at times. So get somebody who not only will buy into that as a rookie, but get someone who, frankly, is used to that role, right?
Right.
And
Right.
have him continue with that. I don't know if it's going to be Halani or Emmanuel Wilson. That's going to be the guy that he competes with until Charbonnet gets back. But overall, I'm optimistic. Um, but I understand the arguments that people have
Right.
drafting for need. It's not. And I don't think there were a ton of other players you could have got instead. Colton Hood, he would have been a good pick. I would have maybe, but I still think then you have concerns about this running back room and what
I
it looks like.
I gave it a B plus, and I'm not huge on picking running backs super high. Robert Mays had a really interesting uh, podcast with Bill Barnwell talking about the value of running backs in the first round
Yeah, I heard
and
that.
how the low first round running backs are like always bust. I
Mhm.
can't help but think about Rashad Penny, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that Penny was a bust. I think Penny was super talented.
Yes.
He just he was always hurt, right? And but those
Right.
games he really was. I think the talent was worthy of the pick.
Yes.
I think Price, yes. Do you wish they would have traded down? Of course. We now know the Niners targeted him. We also know that the gap between Price and the next running backs was enormous.
Right.
The other thing is he was a great scheme fit, right? It's outside zone guy with really great vision, can run with some power,
Mhm.
right? And in stretch play is like that's his thing, right? He loves running the stretch play. He's really good at it, and so it's a scheme fit. It's you don't expect him to take on the world immediately,
Right.
and there is an argument to be to make that running backs without a ton of carries in college are better in the pros because we all know running backs only have a certain amount of carries in their body.
Right.
And so if he is that talented enough to be a first round pick, but didn't have to carry the ball much at Notre Dame, I think that could be a positive for the Seahawks down the road. The other thing is he was like the best kick returner in college football last year. Despite running I think a 4.49, he has great vision and he runs with power. So you sign Shaheed to this, pretty decent deal as a second wide receiver. Losing Shaheed is not something you want to do. We all know that kickoff returns or kick returns in general, there's a high likelihood you get injured. And so to have Price there as a really effective kick returner and take some of that wear and tear off Rashid, I just think the fit makes a ton of sense. The Seahawks want to run the ball. Mike McDonald still wants to run the ball more than Clint Kubiak was willing to run the ball, right?
Yeah.
This is his identity. And you have to have not only do you have to have numbers in the running back room, but I think his offense, what he wants to do, requires talent in that running back room.
Agreed.
Now there's four running backs when Charbonnet comes back that are capable, right? They all do different things, but I like it. And I also think that, so say the Seahawks were an 8-8 team last year who had a ton of holes, running back would be a horrible decision
Right.
where they picked him. But you don't see a ton of holes. Like, right guard, I could see, right guard was a place where we needed somebody. And Bo Stevens, who we'll talk about in a minute, I think was a good pick. Could you have picked a right guard in that, at 32? Maybe. Right center, you need some help at center. There was no obvious center selection there. The one place that I could be critical is, I think, then they shored it up with Dante Fowler Jr., but I could have seen Colton Hood too, like you said.
Mhm.
But I could have seen an edge, right? Losing Mafe, I think having that fourth edge is important to this defense, and that's a place that they could have gone, a direction they could have gone. But I like the pick. I don't love Price as a player. I think he's good. I don't see like elite potential, but I think it makes sense for this team in this moment, and it's a pick that, hey, John Schneider's on fire. It's hard to be critical of him right now. And if that's what he wanted, and it makes sense from a scheme standpoint, more power to you. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that to me, it was a need pick. I think people can say it's not, but the reality is they drafted for need.
Yep.
And in the past, that has gotten the Seahawks team caught up. But I think this was a unique circumstance where this draft class, we've heard a lot of that the class is weak, but even in the classes that were weaker, they had strong depth. So like
Yep.
the back of the draft was really strong in a lot of areas. This didn't have the top end talent nor the depth in a lot of in a lot of ways this year, and so that presents an issue where I mean, yeah, you could go for value, but what is value in a class that's already it could end up being one of the historically weaker classes we've seen in recent history. Could
Right. Right.
obviously they have to get on the field and play, but that's what it would appear to be. So if that's the case, fill the needs. You know what I mean? In that case, like get where you need filled in, and they've got plenty of. They played the comp pick game absolutely. I think they knew that they couldn't bank on this draft class necessarily. They're
Right.
banking on 2027. I think that's when they plan to address the edge issue. That edge class, I'm hearing amazing things about
Yep.
already. That edge class for next year, and frankly, I would rather that. Sometimes you hate when you pick a guy in a class that ultimately wasn't strong. Now you got to make that investment. So investing
Right.
another high capital pick the next year in a
Right.
better draft seems sillier.
Right.
I got their decision to, especially because Mike McDonald has a type.
Yep.
A lot of these guys were smaller, quicker, edges, shiftier.
Yep.
Mike McDonald wants a guy with some power, a
Yep.
guy that's going to
Set
hold
that
you up.
edge. Better set that
Set that
edge. Yep.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that they didn't have that prototype, I completely understand why they chose not to just take a flyer on a person and
Right.
just fill other needs at this point.
Right. The only thing I could so they went so you went running back, safety, corner,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
Could you have taken Colton Hood, taken Bud Clark, and then come back in the third round instead of Julian Neal, taking a Jonah Coleman or a Mike Washington Jr., who I know they were high on, who had crazy measurables for Arkansas? Like, could you have done that? I think yes, you could have. Um, would that have been my play? I think from like a positional value standpoint, I probably would have leaned that way, but I'm not unhappy with what they did at all. It's worth playing out those things, and I was just looking at the running backs taken after Neal. Like I said, Jonah Coleman, Mike Washington Jr., Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska, who I watched a ton, being a Big Ten person. He was very good. There were some guys there, but I think they wanted to lock in someone they felt like was talented enough that they could play 60% of the time and give them production enough to be able to win. The other thing to think about too is if Darnold's your quarterback, you have to have some skill around him. He's not the
Correct.
kind of quarterback that's necessarily going to make people better. So you better have a good running game. Um, so yeah, for me it's a B plus. I get it. There's a lot of things about if it was your run of the mill running back or he wasn't a great fit, then that's different. But again, he likes to run the stretch play. He's an outside zone type of dude. He's got great vision. He's strong, right? Just give me 4 yards. Give me 4 yards and let's let's get into third and three, third and four. He's that type of player. So I like the pick. I like the
Well,
pick.
he's really a home run hitter, and I think that was actually the last one I was going to make on this particular pick. Is I think what they found was with Jonah Coleman, they would have had running backs with similar skill sets. Zach Charbonnet, Jonah Coleman's game, not Mike Washington, but
Coleman is shifty though. Coleman is shiftier than Charbonnet.
yeah,
Charbonnet is just a bull.
but I still think they want the home run hitter. I think they wanted a K9 light, which Jadarian Price can get you. He can hit a home run, right? I think that's what they felt like they were missing. And in fact, I believe they said as much. If you're looking for that specific skill set, then it's him and it's a Mike Washington, and then you have to
Right.
decide if you can deal with the other deficiencies. And so I get that. And I would also say to your question about if they had gone with Donald Coleman, I still think there would just be a bigger question mark around the running back position
Yes, there would be.
in a way that
There absolutely
there's
would be.
not now. Like that solidified more definitely. There would have been a ton of question marks, and there still are question marks. Um, but I'm good with the pick. In fact, to your point about you better be able to run the ball, I agree with Sam Darnold, and not just I agree because of Sam Darnold. I agree because that's the identity that Mike McDonald wants his team to be.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
if nothing else, it is a play into investing in who you say you want to be a running team. You say you want to be a physical team.
Yep.
You're backing that up with your
Yep.
draft picks because everybody that they got was about here. Bud Clark, you got Bud Clark in a minute. Bud Clark, Julian Neal, those guys are physical.
Yep.
Those are tacklers. Those are big guys. Um, and that's so they drafted like they want to be. And if
Right.
nothing else, whether Price, I mean, even if he becomes a bust, coming off of a Super Bowl year where you had the heater that John Snyder just came off of, I don't think I'm going to look back and be upset at this because if nothing else, you played into your identity
Right.
given the limited resources that you had at
Yep.
the time. And I'm
Well,
not
and
going to knock that.
no options. We all know they wanted to trade back. You had no options to trade back. You're going to stay there and you're going to pick who you want. The
Right.
rumor was they wanted, I think, Chris
Chris
Johnson,
Johnson.
the
Yep.
corner. Um,
That would have been great.
and a lot of people liked him to the Seahawks, his mentality, who he is, all that measurables, all that stuff. But then you got to pivot, and there's a 8 minute, per pick. and that's different than it was. So I don't know. I'm happy. Like I said, B plus for me. I'm happy with it. I'm not mad at it. It's not a home run pick
Right.
because I don't think he has elite upside. I don't think he's a 1,800 yard rusher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do think that he was the right pick for them then.
Hmm.
Um,
So you got. Then
so
they
Bud Clark,
picked safety Bud Clark,
look,
6'1", 197 pounds, 77-inch wingspan, uh, ball hawk. He, did he have 15 interceptions? Or was that Julian Edelman?
total for his career, I don't know, but
I
he
think it was
look
14.
that safety position in that defense, especially with Eamon as that chess piece, right? I think obviously there's a place for Julian Love on this team. Obviously they'll play three safeties quite often because Eamon is more like a just a rover. Um,
They
but
play him like a linebacker, Sam
you
linebacker.
gotta have a deep safety on this team. You gotta have a deep safety with range, someone who can get sideline to sideline,
Mhm.
someone who you're comfortable with one safety deep and like all game long, who has that ability to read the quarterback, understand where the ball's going, and get there and make plays. I remember, you know, the Earl Thomas days were fun in part because he was always around the ball. It did not matter where the ball was. It did not matter if it was on the right sideline or the left sideline. He was always there because he had the speed to get there. He had the instincts to get there. What I love, the reason why I said Bud Clark's number one supporter in part is if you have a safety that can take away the deep ball and is a threat to pick the ball off. It's not only he's going to break up the play, but this is a guy who has hands equivalent to your wide receiver. You get nervous to throw the ball against someone like that, right? Or you're not putting enough air under the ball because you know the kind of range that he has. Kobe Bryant played well, and Julian Love played well, but this is a different level of talent. And if Eamon develops into a true strong safety and someone who can play deep some of the time, now you've got two incredibly talented safeties back there, right? And you can do a lot of fun things. I think it was smart. I like his personality is infectious, right? So you're adding a Witherspoon type of mentality back there. You're just adding to that bark and that fire, and that's literally what got you to the Super Bowl was that type of intensity on the defensive side of the ball. But you need to support it, right? I read, I don't know who said it. They talked about how teams can get complacent after winning a Super Bowl, and they can get overly confident, and that it's important to replace through the draft to replace players with guys who are hungry still because they haven't been there yet, who have that mentality to motivate and push the team. That's who Bud Clark is. Even watching his introductory press conference, right? He had his child up there with him, and he's a cool dude.
Yeah, he's cool
He's
too.
intense, right? But I love that in the room, and I know we got by with Ty Okada and those types last year. Obviously, I wasn't a Ty Okada fan, but realistically, you needed more talent back there long term. And Julian Love isn't getting any younger. I love the pick. This is an A plus for me. I think they targeted him. They said that they were all over him in the pre-draft stuff. Like I think the Senior Bowl is where he really did show out, and the Seahawks were all over him at that time. So to bring in a leader, a personality like a Witherspoon Jr. as far as like his mentality, but to play a different position, something with Bryant leaving that you truly needed, that complements the Eamon pick, who might have been the best draft pick of the entire draft last year. Cool. I think this was another smart need, fun, fit the character, like all of it. I'm all about this big A plus for me.
A plus for me as well. Actually, I agree with a lot of your points, but um, yes, he played deep safety very well, but he's also versatile. He can play nickel as well, and so you really
Mm-hmm.
can chess piece them both, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important in the Mike McDonald defense. You need the ability to be able to not know who's coming from where,
Yep.
and I also think he replaces the skill set. Kobe Bryant had a nose for the ball,
Yep.
he had a nose for the ball in a different way. He tended to be around forced fumbles. He tended to be the guy to pick up the if there was a fumble, he was more than likely going to be the guy to recover it. He had a
Hmm.
nose for the ball, but just in a different way. He's a true ball hawk. Don't get me wrong, Kobe Bryant could have picks or that sort of thing, but I think he was just more of a like guy around the ball.
Hmm.
Um, Even when Bud Clark is not picking off the ball, pass deflections like are great. Like he's just getting
Hmm.
his hands. He's exactly at the right place at the right time. Now I do think that he's going to probably start off in a secondary role, in a role
Hmm.
player role. Ty Okada is probably going to be who they go with. I like Ty Okada, but I like even if Bud Clark does not beat out Ty Okada, you needed a Ty Okada replacement. If nothing
Yeah.
else, I think this is an A because this is somebody who, if he has to come in, you feel great about, you got confidence in, and obviously he's got more upside because of his background, his pedigree. Now Ty Okada has made some extremely athletic plays before, and I actually think he works really well with Julian Love. I love that tandem, and at times I love that tandem more than even Kobe Bryant, as great as Kobe was for this team. But I just like adding to that depth, like you said. A lot of Super Bowl teams lose their. That's really where they lose their
The edge.
pieces are correct. So I love the situation he's in because he has the opportunity to compete for the starter position. But
Right.
should he not be ready, you're not depending on him to
Right.
carry the water. Like you're not forcing him into something he's not ready to be in yet also, which means that if he needs a little bit more time, I do believe this kid's gonna hit. I really do. I just his mentality, his character, his
Hmm.
athletic traits, everything about him. I think eventually he will get it. Mike McDonald's defense is complicated though, right? And so you give him time for that learning curve. Similar to Julian Love, in my opinion, it's an opportunity to compete. There's a now cornerback is a little harder, but those snaps that Rico Willen had, those are up for grabs. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
we're getting to him soon. We're getting to that position soon.
but I think for both of these secondary players, you've got other plans in place
Yep.
that we know will do just fine.
Right.
But what got this team to the Super Bowl was their depth.
Yep.
When injuries happened, when people went down, there were other people in their place, and they are smart to recognize that and to continue to play into it.
I agree. I think too Ty Okada is what I would call serviceable. Like you can plug him in for a while, and he can he can be decent. But I think he gets exposed over time, in my
His
opinion,
size.
because the athleticism is not quite there for me. Right. I
Yes.
make the case. So this is a little bit off, but so Jim Edmonds was a Gold Glove center fielder for years for the Angels and then for the Cardinals, and he always made these highlight plays all over Sports Center. Everybody loved him. Jim Edmonds makes the most incredible plays, and I always used to say he makes incredible plays because he's not as fast as everybody else in center field, and so he has to dive and make these beautiful looking plays because he's slow and everyone else would have just been under the ball, right? That's how I feel about Ty Okada, where I think he made some really athletic plays and made a lot of like kind of highlight reel type plays, but I think part of it was because he's not the same level of athlete as say a Bud Clark is, right? And so they looked more amazing because he had to dive when others might not have to. Now you might make the argument that you might not agree with me, but I think that Bud Clark gives you a higher ceiling. Bud Clark raises the potential, right? The ceiling of this secondary because as you said, he's kind of, the pedigree is different. He's a little bit
Yeah.
he's more talented.
Yes. And I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree for different reasons. Like Ty Okada's RAS score, I just pulled up 9.15 out of 10. Like he's very athletic, but the problem is he's 5'11". You know what I mean? And they're just going to be matchups he's just gonna be abused in. You know what I mean? Like it's a size issue. Like there are just some guys he's just gonna have physical limitations. Um, that I don't think Bud Clark has. Actually, I'm gonna pull up. Bud Clark's RAS score as well. He actually is. Bud Clark is more athletic, 9.32.
Mm-hmm.
Now his weight, both of them are still weight wise very light. I think Ty Okada came in like 193.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bud comes in at 197, so he's a little better. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
both small, but that's one. I mean, in an NFL weight room, like that's going to be the least of your issues, but I think you needed the measurables like Bart Clark is 6'1", so he's got a longer wingspan, those type of things. I think we even saying that be an issue with Devin Witherspoon, who we know is a phenomenal corner, right?
Right.
But I just think the secondary was, prior to these picks, your secondary was too small, right? Without Reek Woolen there to be your big corner, that was going to be a major issue that teams were going to be able to take advantage of. And now you've at least given yourself contingencies. Now you need the picks to be good, but you give yourself options in terms of matchups.
Well, speaking of big corners, 6'2", 203, third round pick Julian Neal out of Arkansas,
Yeah,
who prides himself as the most physical corner in the draft, is a very, very good tackler. I think to me, this was like when somebody bounces back from, dating or being with someone who's a certain way, and then you go to the complete opposite with the next one, right? The bounce back. I
yep.
think Julian
Rebound,
Neal was the Reek Woolen bounce back
rebound. Yeah,
because Reek, yeah, exactly, because Reek couldn't or was unwilling to tackle, right? Sub 4.3 speed, 6'4", long arms. Played great his rookie year, but you could run to his side over and over again, and he got benched essentially because whether it was brain farts or he was unwilling to tackle and get dirty. He did do a lot of that last year because he was a contract year and he knew. But could you count on him being that kind of player? I don't know. Julian Neal, on the other hand, wants to play press, wants to really get in you. Is a lot better in zone, but is a physical player. When you run to Julian Neal's side, I watched a little bit of his tape. You've got to treat him like a linebacker, right?
yeah.
You can't really treat him like a corner because he's willing to tackle. And in Mike McDonald's defense, your corners had better be willing to tackle, right? He insists, he demands that his corners tackle. That's why he loves Witherspoon so much. That's why he hated Woolen so much. Woolen was, at times the best cover corner on the team, but he didn't care
In the
because he
NFL,
couldn't.
really.
He didn't care because he couldn't tackle, right? He's like he's still my number three because he's not. He's unwilling. So Julian Neal brings something very different to the table. Like I said, physical, wants to get up in you, wants to play against the run, is exposed in man a bit because he is bigger, and he doesn't quite have that ability to, swivel the hips and whatnot, which obviously is important for a corner. Likes to gamble a little bit at times, but this is a pick that I won't say I love, right? It's not my style of corner. I like the corners who I want my corners to be able to cover, and I think he does a lot of the other stuff. He sounds more like a safety to me, but I know they targeted him. I believe they traded up to get into a place where they could take him. So clearly, he's someone that they wanted. And again, you won the Super Bowl last year, so it's really hard to hate on any of these picks. By the Seahawks and specifically John Schneider, since they did just win. But very interesting pick to me. I think he ends up. I think to your point, we see a lot of Bud Clark in nickel, whether he's actually playing the nickel or just out there in nickel. I think Neal could allow if Neal shows up, he could allow Witherspoon to play in the slot quite a bit more, which would also be fun. You'd have him and Job on the outside. So we'll see. What's your take on Neal?
I think it's a solid pick. I I give it a B plus. Is kind of where I land on it with it. I like to your point. I am used to just a little bit more fluidity with these cornerbacks, but I understand. Now I think Rick Woolen got better at the tackling aspect. Really, I'd say the last year and a half after he got benched, I think he really kind of stepped his game up in that regard. But I also think I also think that he's just not built that way.
No,
One of
he's.
his injuries was on a tackle in the run
Hmm.
game. Like I think when he injured that shoulder, Pete Carroll's last year, I believe it was. Like that
Hmm.
was on a he tried to and he made a good tackle, but he got hurt. You know what I mean? And I think his tentativeness from or of tackling came in part from that injury, right? Like, I could get hurt playing this way. He's not
Right.
wrong. That's not really his game. But I also think what made Mike McDonald hate him, because I do think he hated him to some extent, was just his mentality, right?
Right.
He's a goofball, sort of laissez-faire mentality, and
Right.
Mike McDonald wants his dudes physical, big, and intense. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And that's what Julian Neal is for sure. I don't think he's going to get a lot of play time. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a developmental year for him. The snaps are there. Should he, they could do the rotation kind of like they did last year to get Rick Woolen in. Should he earn those? But I anticipate there'll be a bit of a learning curve because he's so new to the position. Because I do believe, didn't he switch from safety? Like he's new to the cornerback position, from my understanding.
I
I
don't
believe.
know. I
I
don't
think
know
he.
if he switched.
I
He
thought he.
might
I
have.
thought he was the one that went to Arkansas, right, and worked
Mhm.
with the coach. He There was actually a coach, Nick Perry, from the
Okay.
Seahawks that was with him there. But before that, I want to say it was Fresno State, if I'm not mistaken. But I believe he played another position actually,
Okay.
um, and he kind of brought into the cornerback role.
Uh huh.
I'm gonna double check that to make sure
I'll look. I'll look
that
for
I'm
it too.
not misspeaking. But I think I remember hearing something about um, he just recently switched over. So anyway, I think he'll have some development. Let's see years. Yeah, he spent four. Yeah, he's at Fresno State as a starting safety, and he moved to
Okay.
cornerback. Yeah. So yeah, he's still kind of learning, but I like the tools. I think he can get with some technique, with some coaching. I think he'll be able to do both for you. I don't know if he'll ever be the press man guy, that Rick Woolen
Right.
was. I mean, he really was one of the best in the NFL at that, one of the best man coverage corners that you could find. But you get somebody that's competent enough in both, um, and that
Well,
has
yeah.
just as much size. Sorry,
I
go
was gonna say, like you said though, if you have, let's say, he and Bud Clark are the future,
ahead.
and if you have, and then we know Spoon can move from the nickel to outside, right? Job can play is pretty much outside, but even Worry is all over the place. Now you've got this like a kind of amoeba type secondary where
Right.
you, like, to your point, you don't know what the coverage is and you don't know who's blitzing and who's not. You don't know who's on who. It's I think we see them moving closer and closer towards what Mike McDonald wants to do, which is to be so multiple that you just have no idea what's happening, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't surprise me that it's Bud Clark, a deep safety who has some physicality to him, but the reality is a coverage safety for the most part. And
Mhm.
then Julian Neal, who's like a run stuffing type big physical corner, because they're going to be all over the place. I'm sure it's not a coincidence that they took a former safety who's now a corner, right?
Right.
Because he can be multiple back there. I think it's cool, and I think they're getting a little creative, and I think they're trying to get ahead of what's going on in the rest of the NFL a little bit, which is
Yes.
on the defensive side of the ball in the same way that McVay did on the offensive side of the ball, which we talked about a lot. It's super fun, and I think Neil represents that mentality quite a bit.
And one more thing about speaking of Rams, I think they got this. They drafted him with Puka Nakua in mind. Puka's
Yeah,
physicality, the
sure.
ability to bump him at the line of scrimmage, to get him in press camp and get him off his timing, get him off his spot, because that's the issue when it comes to playing Matt Stafford. And I think they probably saw that as one of their issues. How is it that Matt Stafford can continue to kill the Seahawks secondary
Hmm.
when nobody else can? One, he can put the ball where almost no one else can, but part of it is his receivers can get open. I think the physicality to some extent got outmatched. I mean, Rick Woolen got beat a ton.
Yep.
Some of it was mental, some of it was physical, right? Same thing with Job. Job got abused by Puka because they
Yep.
just don't have the size. Devin Witherspoon looks rough in those
Yep.
Rams games sometimes. It's just the reality, and it's all sides related. Devontae Adams is still a big guy. Like,
Yep.
you got to be able to cover those dudes. They got
Who,
guys who can cover those dudes if they can't do anything else.
who's the best receiver on the Cardinals? It's Marvin Harrison
Michael
Jr.
Wilson at this point,
It's Marvin Harrison Jr. Most talented, at least. The
most
most
talented.
talented, right? They're going to give him the ball, but he's also, and he's a little slight, but he's also 6'4", six
Yeah,
three, 6'4". So,
true.
but he can be, you can bump him a little bit. You can out physical him a little bit. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I think that's an incredible point that two of the other three teams in your division have big receivers,
Yep.
and that's how they're trying to beat you. So, yeah, I think there's opportunity for Neil. I think you're right. It might be a little bit of a slow burn, but that's okay. I don't love the idea of Nehemiah Pritchett on the field or I don't know how to
Yeah.
pronounce it.
I don't know. Noah I.
Um,
Noah I.
Igbenogany, uh, the corner that they signed, and he has some guaranteed money, so he is going to play, right? So you've got there's some depth, right? We know Pritchett's a good athlete. I know you were a hater.
I'm a
Uh,
hater. I'm a
you were a
hater.
hater that,
I'm still a hater.
but he's got some talent. Anyways, point is, Neil plays a different role on this team. I think Neil, to your point, was picked with the division in mind. I'm very interested to see what happens to him. I got time for one more, if that's okay.
Yep.
Um, this might be the most interesting pick to me
Hmm.
in this draft. 6'5", 315, Bo Stevens.
Yep.
He's in camp as a right guard out of Iowa. I love me some Iowa linemen. Um, Iowa produces a ton of them.
Yes, they do.
He is expected to come to camp and compete immediately with Anthony Bradford. My understanding is they were willing to pick him potentially a couple of rounds higher than they did.
Hmm.
They were that high on
Yeah, they
him.
they traded up to get him.
Uh-huh.
They didn't have
They
a
gave
pick
up a
here, so
four.
they traded back in. They traded a pick, a fourth rounder next year
Yep.
to
Yep.
get
Which is a high price,
Yep.
right? Trading a four in the next year for a five is a very high price to pay.
Mhm.
But you've got a guy who he's a zone blocker, right? He loves to block in the running game. He can create running lanes in a zone scheme. So you think about what we talked about with Price, running, stretch play, outside zone, looking for a crease, being able to get through that crease. Here's a guy who likes to um, create those creases and is good at that particular style of blocking. I think that, there's some pass blocking potential. Interestingly, I don't think the Seahawks are overly concerned about pass blocking in the way that they're acting right now. Um, I
He's a
obviously
great pass blocker. He's great.
Bo Stevens.
Only allowed 2 sacks in his last 2 seasons.
I don't. What I see is a good run blocker who's going to learn how to block in the passing game. But you may be right. I guess my thing is I love the fact that they understand Bradford is a weak link. They want to bring in competition for Bradford. I think it's an admission of Christian Haynes not working out. So
Yes.
be it. You're not going to hit on every single one. Um, Not for nothing, but it seems like they want to bring in those crusty white dudes on the interior
Yes.
line. You got
That's
you
what I
got
need.
Sandell, who's like kind of undersized but is good, and a technician. You got Zabel. Now you're bringing in another like Midwest white dude in the middle. Um, but hey,
Sundell
if
was black, I thought.
who
Sundell's not. Sundell? Am I tripping?
and
I feel like Sundell was
black name
African
white
American.
dude, I think. Hold on, let me look.
Oh no, no, you're right. You're right. You're right.
I know he was way too close to Gray Zabel to be a black dude.
Oh, fair enough.
Don't get me
Fair
going.
enough. No,
It's
you got
too
it.
it's
You got
too uh it's too late. Yeah, he
But
white. He white.
yeah, to
But
your
no,
point,
I
that's what I need. What is Jackson Bevan always says? I need to wonder
yeah,
where my alignment was on
yeah.
January 6th insurrection, right?
Yes.
I need to wonder where they were. Hey, that strategy is working. I
Hey, that's
agree with
real
Jackson
though.
Bevins.
That's
I need to
real.
wonder where they were.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny. That's what's true though.
it's true,
They ain't
exactly.
lying.
So, but to your point, A++ for me. I don't care that they have had to give up capital. I believe competition is important. If nothing else, even if Anthony Bradford is not beat out in camp or throughout the year, we know in order to get the best version of Anthony Bradford,
Uh,
he needs competition.
yep.
Like when you just give him the spot, he's a dude that struggles with motivation. In fact, they intentionally avoided naming him the starter through all of camp
Yep.
because they wanted him to have some kind of motivation under him because he's the kind of guy that once he gets comfortable, he starts making mistakes, he gets sloppy, and he makes mistakes anyway. But I like the upside of it. I like that he's I think he's competent in both. He's not athletic, so he reminds me in my opinion. I project this out to worst case scenario. He's a guard version of Olu Oluwatimi,
Okay.
right? He's not athletic, so he's got some limitations to you, but he's a fringe starter at worst. You know what I mean? Like obviously, I think he can do better than. See what you I don't do that.
I'm trying to tell you.
You know what threw me? It's the tan, honestly. Like the tan, like I remember him being like I thought he was like light skinned, but
Now I
not
gotta
really.
figure out how
Yeah,
to unshare.
I got it. But no, I like
Uh,
this pick because I think worst case scenario, you got super solid depth, right? We remember if somebody went down on this offensive line, like you had a heart attack. Like I
yeah.
remember those days. They weren't long ago. It's like 2 years ago. We were still doing this spot. We were doing this podcast when we
It
had
was
those
well, it
things
was
happen.
Stone Forsyth and Jake
Yes,
Curhan, and they
yeah.
were all over the line, all over the line.
Amazon employees, all of them now, and so I'm just
It's
so
true though.
the value and the depth of having somebody, even if Anthony Bradford that still went. It pissed everybody off. It really would. But even if he wins again, he seems to be when he's motivated. The dude's not that bad, right?
Hey, look, if you
I
can win a
wouldn't hate it
Super
for content.
Bowl with Sam Bradford, or I mean Sam Darnold, you can win a Super Bowl with Anthony Bradford.
Exactly, exactly. So Super Bowl winning guard. If they decide to go continuity, I'm not gonna be mad at it. But I think if he has to start, you feel good about his upside. You know,
Yeah,
long term, he's your guy, and maybe they get somebody else to compete with him after Bradford goes. But
yeah,
either way, I love the pick, man. I give me an offensive lineman any day.
yep,
I'd rather have this pick over the edge, actually, because they didn't have the prototype edges they were looking for in this class. This way you found somebody that fit your scheme, you
yeah,
found somebody that fit your prototype. You
yep,
obviously know what that type is. And you found someone that can potentially, I think at worst, just be great depth for you, and at best, a potential upside. I mean, he's not the most athletic guy, but neither is Jalen Sundell. He's getting the job done.
right. If he even if he's serviceable, and now you have a third guard that you can. It's not Laumea coming in there, right? It's not Raw like that. Bo Stevens was first team All American,
Right?
right? He has some technique. He knows
Mhm.
what he's doing. I think
Technician.
that's a huge deal. So no, it it might be Bud Clark is my favorite pick, but I think Bo Stevens was is close, and I think might have been the smartest pick that they made. I'm glad that they got him. Very
More
very
Bo. We still got
glad.
Bobo, but more Bo. Yeah,
More
put
white
me in.
Bo.
My
Give me,
favorite pick.
hey, give me black Bo, Bo Jackson. I don't need white Bo no more.
I'll take Bobo and Bo. And I'm team. My favorite pick is Bo Stevens. I love this pick. I loved the need. I loved emphasizing the trenches still, even though they didn't get anybody on the defensive line. Like they still emphasize the trenches.
Yep.
That still lets me know this is still something they're valuing it. They're building around it, building depth at that position. Um, give me that, and I think the floor is high, right? I'm big on high floors. Like the ceiling is cool, but like will win you games, but will win you playoffs, and obviously will win you a Super Bowl is a high floor. Um, and then yeah, a few guys who have high ceilings. That's pretty much all you need. But
It
yeah,
was. What do you give the draft as a whole?
B+. B+. I think it was smart of them to. We don't have to get into the players, but smart of them to um, get get some extra picks. Right, they had 4 picks come in. They ended up with 8 players.
Yep.
In part because They didn't feel like they'll be able to get folks in undrafted free agents, like being a Super Bowl winning team. They were going to get turned down quite a bit, so they wanted some competition for their rookies, which is smart. It still reinforces that mentality. Uh, so yeah, I think given the circumstances, best you could do. Now, I'm not jumping for joy. You know what I mean? Like I obviously there's no high upside, sparkly, flashy picks, but
What do you
this
mean?
was
Bud Clark was.
what now?
Bud Clark was.
Not for me. not
I'm
not
half
a
joking.
safety.
I'm half
Not a
joking.
safety. But
I
yeah, for
I'm a
you,
B. I'm a B plus. I think the high pick, high upside, exciting, fun picks that could change the team aren't necessarily there, right? And that's
right,
why it's not an A.
right,
But the strategy of taking the best available running back, shoring up, that need, adding infusing talent into that room. You had bodies, you might not have talent. Given the identity of the team, like we talked about, I like that pick. I don't think there's a ton of upside there, but I like the pick. It makes sense to me on a Super Bowl winning team. We talked about that. I obviously love the Bud Clark pick for all the reasons we talked about. I think that was an A plus. Julian Neal is the one that I think I have some questions about, just because a big stiff corner, not that he's stiff, but a bigger corner that's physical. I don't always see them working out. But again, I trust John Schneider. That's probably the pick that I have the least faith in, if you want to call it that.
agreed.
And the Bo Stevens pick, there's a reason why he lasted till the fifth round, right? The athleticism isn't quite there. But to your point, man, when in doubt, take a lineman
Hmm.
on either side of the ball. When in doubt, take a Midwest lineman,
From Iowa.
who's an All American. There's something to be said. You don't become an All American for no reason.
Mhm.
Look at Luca Garza, the center for the Celtics, right? AP Player of the Year at Iowa as a basketball player. Wasn't we everybody knew wasn't a great NBA talent because he lacked the athleticism and the quick twitch. Reality is he's carved out a very good career for himself because he's skilled, and I think Bo Stevens has some of that in him. First team All American at Iowa, technician, smart, right? He's going to come in. He's going to figure out a way. So I think they address needs, which I don't like teams that draft for need necessarily, but I think
Right.
that you still have to plug those holes somehow,
Hmm.
and they did. I think they got the best talent. There weren't a lot of like game plays that I would put together that where they would have gotten different players or a better group of players than they did.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and I think they addressed edge by signing Dante Fowler Jr. to a 1 year deal,
Correct.
right? A proven pass rusher who, if he's your number four, right? If you've got Hall and Wosu and Lawrence, if you want to call Lawrence an edge, you've got talent there.
Hmm.
So I'm good. I'm good. I like the draft. They weren't going to get an A plus from me, unless they ended up with 4 second round picks or something like that instead of what they had. But I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
excited. It's not Cortez Kennedy. It's not Walter Jones. It's not that kind of draft. But that's not what this draft was going to be with the Super Bowl. I'll take the ring in this draft over some high picks and a team that went 4-13 last year.
Right. Especially high picks in this draft, that the high picks aren't gonna.
Yes,
There weren't too many difference makers anyway, even if you had better picks. So,
I
like
agree.
I think it worked out perfectly. I hope they go back to value next year, and if they do, then off and away we go, and we're
Yep.
good. The Dante Fowler thing I actually prefer better in anyway because those edge rushers. I don't know if you paid attention in recent years, but a lot of the younger edge rushers, the dominant pass
Yes.
rushers are old because there aren't any other than like Anderson. That's really it. Like there aren't
Unless you're
game
elite.
changing young
Unless you're
edges.
elite. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like unless you're a Brian Burns or unless you're elite, it's hard. And
yeah,
there is more technique to that position than people think.
correct. It
Yep.
takes them a while. Most of your edges in that first year don't give you anything. Boye gave us nothing. Derek gave us nothing. Right? It takes at least a year to get those guys even going a little bit. So for a Super Bowl window, the smarter thing was to go ahead and take somebody with the experience that can give you something right now, and they can give you at least what Boye gave you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure they'll draft the edge pretty high next year. So
Yep.
Good stuff. All right, Tino, tell the folks where they can find you and get us out of here.
Tino Jr. 20 at Blue Sky. Less active right now, working a ton. Part of the reason for the gap in podcast. I apologize for that. You can still find me there, and you can still find me watching a lot of baseball.
All right. Well, find the show at Seahawks 360 Podcast. Really active more so on X right now. We'll probably get the Blue Sky account up and going as we get near close to the season. But anyway, that's it. That's all the time we have for today. We're out. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.